September 2023 occupied Crimea. A British Storm Shadow missile has just destroyed something that Russia thought was invisible. This was not a standard military target. It was the headquarters of Putin's most secret operation. I'm talking about the command of the Shadow Fleet, which moves billions of dollars in illegal oil. At that moment, Putin thought he had only lost a building. He had no idea that Ukraine had only just begun. Because what happened after that attack completely changed the rules of the game. Ukraine didn't stop at the headquarters. They went after the ships themselves. And now, in 2025, something extraordinary is happening in the world's oceans. Russian oil tankers are mysteriously exploding from the Mediterranean to the Baltic Sea. But how exactly can a nation that practically has no navy manage to turn Putin's greatest economic advantage into his biggest vulnerability? To understand what's really happening, we first need to know the target. The so-called Russian Shadow Fleet is not just a collection of old ships sailing the oceans. It's the main source of money that keeps Putin's war machine running. After the West imposed massive sanctions on Russian oil in 2022, Putin had a problem. How could he keep selling billions of dollars in oil to fund his war? The answer was both brilliant and desperate at the same time. He decided to assemble a ghost fleet. This fleet grew from fewer than 100 ships to somewhere between 400 and 1,400 oil tankers. These are ships that operate in the shadows, using false flags from countries like Panama, Liberia, and Malta. They practice what experts call deceptive navigation, turn off their global positioning system tracking systems when they don't want to be seen, forge documents, constantly change their names, and carry out oil transfers in the middle of the ocean to hide the Russian origin of the cargo. What makes this fleet even more concerning is the age of the ships. We're talking about oil tankers that are 20 to 25 years old. That's much higher than the global average of 13 years. They're real floating time bombs sailing the oceans with questionable maintenance and dubious insurance. But the numbers show why Putin was willing to take those risks. Between February 2022 and June 2025, Russia collected more than $610 billion just from oil sales. And the Shadow Fleet was responsible for a huge share of that money. In 2024, 83% of Russian crude oil was transported by these illegal ships. For Putin, each tanker in the Shadow Fleet represents millions of dollars in revenue that should have been blocked by Western sanctions. The problem is that Ukraine also knew this. That's when the Ukrainians developed a response that no one expected. If the West couldn't stop those ships with sanctions, Ukraine would stop them with explosives. And Ukraine's secret weapon to accomplish this feat has a first and last name. They are the Sea Baby and Magura naval drones. These are not simple remote-controlled toys. The Sea Baby is 6 meters long, reaches 90 kilometers per hour, and can carry up to 850 kilograms of explosives for up to 1,000 kilometers. It's like a giant, smart torpedo. The Magura, on the other hand, is smaller, faster, and more maneuverable. The most advanced model, the Magura 7, is 7 meters long and can carry 650 kilograms of explosives. But here's the impressive detail. These drones aren't just used to attack ships. They were equipped with anti-aircraft missiles, including the famous American Air Intercept missile 9 Sidewinder, and the Soviet R-73. In May 2025, a Magura Fa-7 made history by shooting down 2 Russian Su-30 fighter jets. It was the first time in history that a naval drone shot down fighter jets. Imagine the scene. A drone the size of a small boat sailing in the Black Sea and firing missiles at Russian fighter jets flying overhead. This capability turned every Ukrainian naval drone into a double threat. Putin now has to worry not only about his ships, but also about the planes that were supposed to protect them. But the real genius of the Ukrainian strategy isn't in the technology, it's in the surgical precision of the attacks. One of the most emblematic happened on January 28, 2025. The target was the Sea Charm, an oil tanker sailing under the flag of the Marshall Islands off the coast of Turkey. A Ukrainian naval drone opened a 1-meter breach in the hull and completely destroyed the propulsion system. The ship was adrift, but didn't sink. This pattern was repeated in all subsequent attacks. On February 4th, it was the turn of Grace Ferrum, a Liberian-flagged oil tanker that was in the port of Tobruk, Libya. An internal explosion devastated the propulsion shaft. The ship had just visited a Russian port and was carrying oil to circumvent the sanctions. On February 15th, what may have been the most audacious attack took place. The Sea Jewel ship, sailing under the Maltese flag, was docked at the Italian port of Savona when 2 simultaneous explosions damaged its hull and steering system. Investigators found concave deformations indicating the use of explosives planted by divers or magnetic devices. But it was the attack at the end of February that showed how far Ukraine was willing to go. The target was the Koala, an oil tanker flying the flag of Antigua and Barbuda. And the most impressive thing was the location of the attack, the port of Ust-Luga in Russia, on the Baltic Sea. Multiple explosions devastated the engines and the propulsion system. Yes, Ukraine carried out the attack inside Russian waters. The most recent one was on June 29th. The Villa Moura, flying the Maltese flag, was sailing near Benghazi in Libya when a powerful explosion flooded the engine room and destroyed the propulsion shaft and steering system. In all these attacks, the pattern is identical. Ukraine always targets the propulsion and steering systems, never completely sinking the ships. That's no accident. It's pure strategy. First, because it avoids oil spills that could create environmental disasters and alienate neutral countries. Second, it allows Ukraine to keep denying it was them. And in fact, Ukraine has never officially taken responsibility for any of these attacks. Third, it creates an impossible dilemma for Putin. If Russia wants to prosecute Ukraine internationally for these attacks, it would have to prove that the ships attacked are part of its shadow fleet. That would mean publicly admitting that it is using ships with false flags to circumvent international sanctions. In other words, Putin is trapped in a situation he can't get out of. But the impact of these attacks goes far beyond the individual ships that were damaged. The international response was immediate and dramatic. Baltic Sea countries such as Denmark, Sweden, and Germany began to require proof that all oil tankers passing through their waters have valid insurance. Almost overnight, the interpretation of maritime law became stricter. NATO, on the other hand, launched Operation Baltic Sentry, a surveillance mission that uses patrol aircraft, warships, and a new fleet of sail-drone naval drones to monitor Putin's fleet in real time. Now, the Baltic Sea has become a zone of intensive military surveillance, but the military response was only part of the problem. The Ukrainian attacks also caused a crisis in the private sector. The global maritime insurance market went into panic. Stop and think. How do you calculate insurance risk when commercial ships can be sabotaged by covert military operations anywhere in the world? Traditional insurers, who cover 90% of global shipping, began to refuse coverage for any ship with even remote ties to Russia. This forced the creation of a parallel insurance market with Russian, Chinese, and other non-Western companies offering questionable coverage. Some of these insurers were found to be issuing completely fraudulent documents. Putin now faces rising costs to keep his shadow fleet operating. Each Ukrainian attack not only takes a ship out of service for months, but also exponentially increases the insurance and maintenance costs for all the other ships in the fleet. As you can see, Ukraine has turned Putin's shadow fleet, which was supposed to be his solution to evade sanctions, into a massive financial headache. But perhaps the most impressive aspect of this campaign is how it confirms a military theory that's almost 200 years old. In the 19th century, the French Navy developed the Oceanic doctrine, which said that a small navy could defeat a larger one by using many small, fast, and inexpensive vessels against the enemy's capital ships. Ukraine is applying exactly that doctrine with 21st century technology. Without a conventional navy, they used low-cost naval drones to neutralize a third of the Russian Black Sea fleet. Now they've extended this strategy from military warfare to economic warfare, attacking commercial ships that are the real economic capital ships of Russia. And the future of this shadowy war on the oceans is just beginning. Russia has already started to respond, developing its own naval counter-drones and using helicopters and jets to patrol commercial routes. Putin might even start using warships to escort high-value oil tankers, drastically increasing the risk of direct confrontation with Ukrainian forces or even NATO observers. But the precedent has been established. Other countries that operate fleets like this, such as Iran and North Korea, are studying both the vulnerabilities exposed by Russia and the methods developed by Ukraine. Now it's much easier for small countries to cause major damage. At sea, Ukraine has proven that nowadays, a small country with smart technology can attack the economy of a much larger adversary, even far from its borders. Putin thought his shadow fleet was invisible. And Ukraine, well, they showed that nowadays there's nowhere to hide in the ocean. Now I want to know your opinion. After everything you've seen here, do you think Ukraine's strategy of directly attacking the ships that finance the war is more effective than traditional Western sanctions? Leave your answer in the comments. If this video helped you understand this shadowy war happening in the oceans, share it with your friends and subscribe to the channel for more analyses like this. See you next time.